This is Gavin. We are doing an FU12 life narrative interview with participant number 3049. Today's date is August 16th, 2017. This is an interview about the story of your life. Our purpose in these interviews is to get to know you better and to catalog people's life stories. Please know that there are no right or wrong answers to my questions. Instead, your task is simply to tell me about some of the most important things that have happened in your life and how you imagine your life developing in the future. I will guide you through the interview so that we can finish it in about an hour and a half. Since our interview is beginning at about 2 p.m., we will try to finish this by about 3 p.m. or 3:30. I think that you'll enjoy this interview. Most people do. I should also let you know that I need to read the questions exactly as they are written for the sake of the research. It's not a test in any way, but we want to be consistent in the way that we ask the questions. I'm also not able to provide a lot of feedback or responses to what you say, as I do not want to influence your story. We want to hear your life story from your perspective, without being influenced by me at all. So please do not worry if I do not seem very responsive. I'm simply trying to avoid influencing the way in which you tell your story. You may also see me write something down every now and then. I'm not evaluating you at all. I'm simply making notes of the parts of your story that you mention. Some of the questions are long and have multiple parts, so I'm happy to repeat anything if you want. Please feel free to ask. In addition, if you need to take a break during the interview, please let me know. Are you ready to begin?
I am.
Okay. I would like you to begin by thinking about your life since the age of 18 as if it were a book. Imagine that each major period or aspect of your life represents a chapter in the book. You may have 2 to 5 chapters. Please provide me with a title for each chapter, and then describe very briefly what each chapter is about. We will want to spend about 10 minutes on the first section of the interview, so please keep your descriptions of the chapters very brief. So, what would you like to title your first chapter?
Now, could you repeat, the first chapter goes from age 18 to...
To any point, where you feel it would end.
Okay. I think it would go from age 18 to age 30. Mm-hmm. I recently saw the film Obit. Have you all ever seen it? Because it's about the obituary writers of the New York Times. And it's really a thought-provoking film. I saw it about a month ago or so. And they view their job as not to write about a person's death, but to write about a person's life. And it kind of got me thinking about this ahead of time. And I was surprised to realize that my time from age 18 to 30 was just so filled with struggle and missteps, failures even, and it was a hard period for me because I had been a very bright high school student. I was in an Ivy League college, but I didn't have a sense of direction, and a lot of things that I tried did not work out at all. And I know this for a fact because also recently I had my study remodeled and I started cleaning out my files, and they just showed, I was always interested in writing, and they just showed so many rejections, which is very typical of writers. I didn't realize that then. And somehow I was able to keep going, even though I didn't really know why I was keeping going or what I was learning. I was not depressed or anything like that because of all these events. I guess I always felt hopeful, but it was a very difficult 12 years, I would say. On the positive side, I did eventually discover my career. I became a counselor. I had a lot of negative work experiences, though. I was a seventh grade teacher. That was one of my first jobs in an experimental program for kids who were behind 2 years approximately in their basic skills or who had behavior problems. And I was a brand new teacher, and I was dealing with these very difficult to deal with kids. And I don't know how I made it through that year. It was just horrible. It was just awful. And I had always thought I wanted to be a teacher, and I had to give up that idea. And in fact, then I saw a counselor myself to try to figure out what to do, and I thought, well, maybe I would, like counseling, and that I seem to be good at and able to do. But, those were really up and down years, looking for a partner. I finally got married at the age of 30, so that began a whole new era in my life. That was tough, and I don't think people give the 20s enough attention as a difficult period in a person's life. I mean, I think retirement is great. It's fabulous. I'm doing everything I've ever wanted to do. You really have a lot to look forward to. You do. But the 20s, that was a hard era. But I think nowadays there's more support for trying things and failing and having a growth mindset about failures and setbacks, because there's a lot of that in the psychology research now. And so I hope it's a little easier for you guys than it was for me. It was horrible. So let's see. So I think I'm not sure. So I think that's about it. It was really a decade or so of struggle, trying to find myself, and it was the 70s, which were crazy. So that didn't help. So there you have it. That's chapter 1. Although really, of course, there's my early life before that, which gave me a strong foundation and probably instilled me with the hope and optimism that I needed to get through the 20s.
Thank you for telling me about that.
Okay.
Could you next tell us about the chapter 2?
Chapter 2, okay. That would be approximately the 30s. And that would be marriage and children. I did continue on with my goal of writing, and I did have a few successes in my 30s. I was the book reviewer for a counseling publication for a while. I played the guitar. This may have been in my 20s, I don't remember. But I played basic folk guitar, and I think this was in my 20s. I took in some students. That was really fun, and I'm still in touch with one of my students who got much better than I ever did, because I could only do basic guitar. But anyway, when I was cleaning out my files, I came across rejections from some of the folk magazines. There was one called Sing Out that Pete Seeger was a part of. He was a folk singer in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. He lived a long life. But I did have a few successes, and my marriage was rather difficult, although there were some positive sides to it too. And I think the stability of it was very good for me. And being a mother certainly was a very positive thing. I was a stepmother and a mother. And my daughter, whose contact information you have, just has always been a great person. She just was like my neighbor called her the baby woman. She was just always wise and kind, and she still is. And now she's a mother, so I'm a grandmother. So that was wonderful to be a mother. Has been a really significant event in my life. And I did go back to work about a year after her birth, and I was really mad at my husband about that because I still didn't have my footing in my career, and I didn't have any confidence in myself. And I kind of wanted to use motherhood as an excuse for not meeting the problems that I was facing in my career. But he, just insisted, and we needed the money, and I am so glad he did that because it enabled me to work through a lot of the challenges that I faced, and I was able to do that. And of course, being able to enjoy retirement, part of that is having enough money for retirement, and I worked in my profession for 32 years, and so I was able to get a good retirement, and I highly recommend for a middle-class person having a good retirement nest egg so that you're not held back when you get older. Anyway, so that was chapter 2.
Thank you. And now could you tell us about chapter 3?
Chapter 3 would have been in my 40s. And that would be kind of a divorce and exploration. So I got divorced, and I had to learn a lot of things, how to be financially on my own. But again, that was sort of a blessing in disguise because that's really good to know, one of the good things about my husband was that he knew a lot about money management. I had never heard of a certificate of deposit. And he managed our money very well. We both were savers, not spenders, so that was helpful, that we didn't have a difference there. My daughter continued to thrive. And I think having my parents around was very important to me as a single parent. I worked one evening a week, and they babysat one evening a week. And my daughter got to see their relationship, which was very stable and good. And for a while, I kind of threw myself into dating. But there came a point where I realized it was distracting me from raising my daughter. So I decided that while she was in high school, I was not going to date anymore. And I really felt great about that decision. And I just focused on being a good mother, and that was one of the best decisions I've ever made, because I felt so torn apart with the dating stuff. So, so that was my 40s. I kind of learned to be on my own and made a good decision. And my daughter did really well. And so that was a better decade. Things got better and better, actually, in my life.
Thank you. Thanks for telling us about that.
Okay.
Could you please tell us about the next chapter?
Okay, the 50s. All right. The 50s, I met my wonderful partner, Brian. We've been together for 21 years. And my daughter went off to college, so I felt free to date. And it's not that my relationship with Brian is problem-free or some ideal or anything like that. We're both people with faults, but how can I explain this? we are very different, and we've just accepted that. We haven't tried to change each other. He has different ideas about money. I'm more of a saver. He's more of a spender. He likes risky investments. I like safe investments. That's just one example of how we're different. Anyway, but we just like enjoying life together, and so we don't have to be this perfect couple that, shares values. I think a lot of our values are a little more different than I would like. Anyway, 50s, let's see. I'm trying to, I think I started working at the community college around that time. Wait a minute, No, I started working at the community college in my 40s as a counselor, I think. And I loved it. And so in my 50s, I continued to work there, had a very stable job. I began to specialize in certain areas. And I guess the 50s was a time when, with my daughter in college and my stepchildren pretty much out of the picture since they were older, I was just able to develop myself, focus on my work and my relationships and my friendships, and it was a very good decade. I started writing a book, and I worked on it on vacations and holidays, and then in my 60s, I retired. Well, let's say that chapter goes from 50 to 62. I retired at 62. When I learned that my retirement, I could really live on my retirement, and I wanted to finish this book. It was on how to change a habit. And it was a summary of the research in that area, but written so that any community college student could understand it. I taught a class called Habit Change for a long time, and each person chose a habit that they wanted to work on. Some people chose wanting to exercise more. Some people chose wanting to eat healthier, stop procrastinating, study a certain amount of time a day. One person chose ending world hunger. Anyway, it was a really fun short course to teach, and that was, it just was a topic area that just galvanized me. I was really interested in working on it. So when I discovered at about 62 or 62 and a half that I was able to retire, I wanted to retire to finish the book. I continued working part-time, another thing I heartily recommend. I think it would have been a shock to the system to not work at the community college anymore. I loved it so much, and I continued to teach and to pitch in during peak periods of registration, helping to register students. And I continued to do that for about 5 years, I think. Through luck, I managed to get this book published in 2009, and then I was invited to blog on the Psychology Today website, which I still do. I've done that for the past 6 years or so, and I love that. So at last, my interest in writing bore fruit late in life, and I have ideas for lots of other writing projects, and believe it or not, I'm fully retired, but it's hard to find the time, even as a retired person, to do all of the things that I want to do. But anyway, so retirement's great. I'm 72 now. I'm about to be 73, so I guess that last chapter is 62 to 72. And I've been able to fulfill some dreams that of mine, and I hope to keep doing that. And now that I have a granddaughter who was born 2 years ago, I make books for her, and I've gotten interested in children's books, so I have those ideas rolling around in my head. It's harder than it looks, by the way. So I travel back and forth from St. Louis to Oslo, and my family, who now lives in Oslo, comes here to visit me too. And through the magic of FaceTime, I see my granddaughter all the time. I mean, it's just amazing. And all of these visits have paid off. I mean, she loves me, I love her. I mean, her face lights up when she sees me. It's really great. So, anyway, so this last decade has been fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. And I think you should also ask about childhood, because I had a great childhood, and I went to summer camp, and I wrote somewhere on here that I often feel like I'm back 10 years old again, with the world opening in front of me, the world is my oyster, kind of feeling that you get when you're really young and things are good. So anyway, there you have it, my life story.
Thanks for telling us about that. And for the questions following that, you can't talk about your life before the age of 18.
Okay.
Let's move on to the next section of the interview. Could you please describe a scene or moment in your life that stands out as an especially positive experience? This might be the high point scene of your entire life, or else an especially happy, joyous, exciting, or wonderful moment in the story. Please describe what happened, when and where it occurred, who was involved, and what you were thinking or feeling. And also, please say a word or two about why you think this particular moment was so good, and what the scene may say about you or who you are as a person.
Well, oh my goodness. Well, the birth of my daughter was very exciting. And I have discovered in life that sometimes the most exciting experiences for me are preceded or involve, and I hate to admit this because I'm a control freak and I like to have everything very orderly and organized, but it's like sometimes if you're on your way to a restaurant and you get lost and you finally find your way to the restaurant, the food tastes much better. I don't know, that to me is sort of like when my daughter was born, I really did not want to have a lot of drugs or anything. I'd done a lot of research on childbirth and the importance of the first 3 years of life and all of that. And anyway, so my husband and I were in agreement that we wouldn't go to the hospital until I really needed to go. So I was in labor for 9 hours, starting, I don't know, at 4 a.m. or something like that. And then we went to what's now BJC, Jewish hospital, and I managed to have a medication-free childbirth. And it's just incredible. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to put it. There was my little daughter, where a person didn't exist, then all of a sudden a person does exist. It's such a miracle. And again, it wasn't like this was a totally positive experience. My husband was with me throughout the labor and delivery. And then it was the Jewish holiday of Passover, so he went off to a Seder, and I was in the hospital by myself. And the nurses forgot to bring me dinner. And, I was hungry, but, it was still a great experience. I'll never forget it. And it was just exciting. It was just like literally the fruit of my labor. It was just thrilling. She was healthy. She was a girl. I was happy about that. I mean, I would have been happy with any healthy baby, but I was particularly happy to see a girl. We have only girls in our family. I have a sister. My sister has 2 daughters. Her daughter has 2 daughters. And my daughter has a daughter. So we don't have any boys in our family, and I wouldn't have known how to raise one. So it worked out great. That was a really good time. I was just so happy when she arrived in the world.
Thank you for telling us about that. We're now going to move on to the next section of the interview. Thinking back over your life, could you please identify a scene that stands out as a low point or even the lowest point in your life story? Even though this event is unpleasant, I would appreciate you providing as much detail as you can about it. What happened in the event, when and where it occurred, who was involved, and what you were thinking and feeling. Also, could you please say a word about why you think this particular moment was so bad, and what the scene may say about you or your life?
Okay, well, I'll avoid talking about the X-rated moments and just go to a very significant low point in my career. And I think this is worth talking about because I've always been a very career-oriented person, even when I was a little girl, and partly because I didn't like the things I saw my mother doing. My mother was a housewife, and she played golf and played bridge, and I didn't want to do either of those things. I mean, I just didn't enjoy them. I wanted to work. I admired my father, who worked and came home and was an interesting person. So this low point was very shocking to me, and it was that first year of teaching when I could not, and I was co-teaching with another teacher. We could not control the class of kids that we were assigned, and it was so traumatic to me. There are a few scenes in literature like this, and every time I read them, it's like getting re-traumatized, because it was like, oh my God, maybe I'm not going to be able to have a career. Maybe I won't be able to earn my own living. I really wanted to be able to earn my own living. And decades later, I heard Terry Gross of Fresh Air on NPR being interviewed herself. She apparently had an experience just like this, and she lasted even a shorter time than I did in teaching middle school. She also could not control the class, and eventually quit after a couple of months. It was so painful, kids out of control. It's just an awful feeling. And I just found out about her, I don't know, within the last 10 years or something, and I thought, well, isn't it wonderful that she had that bad experience, because, she's a fabulous interviewer. I don't know if you've ever heard any of her work on Fresh Air on St. Louis Public Radio, but she's great. And if she hadn't had that experience, the world would have been deprived of a great interviewer. But anyway, for me, it was like so, it was terrible. It was really, really awful. And plus, I didn't have assertiveness skills, and I didn't know how to speak up for myself, and the other teacher I was working with dominated me, and it was crazy.
Thank you for telling us about that. Okay. Let's move on to the next section of the interview. In looking back over your life, it may be possible to identify certain key moments that stand out as turning points, episodes that marked an important change in your life or your life story. Please identify a particular episode in your life story that you now see as a turning point in your life. Again, for this event, please describe what happened, where and when it occurred, who was involved, and what you were thinking and feeling. Also, could you please say a word about what you think this event says about you as a person or about your life?
I feel like I'm searching for an instance where I had like a life-changing insight because of an event that occurred. Apart from the ones I've mentioned, well, I don't know, in recent years, the last maybe 3 or 4, I don't know if one event in itself precipitated this, but I somehow realized that I think this has to do kind of with learning about mindfulness and the importance of being able to tune in to the present moment. Partly, I just became more aware that I often was very short with people, that I sometimes approached them with a sense of entitlement, and this was not good because my image of myself was of a kind person, and yet I could be very, I don't know if nasty is the right word, but demanding and it usually was when I was frustrated with something. And so I had to learn, I think I've grown a lot in the past 2 years especially, although the other day I had a little incident, so it's 2 steps forward, 1 step backward, of, and this sounds odd for someone who was a counselor to say, but I think I've gotten a lot better in appreciating the other person's, the demands on the other person, particularly like home repair people or technicians at the store or the computer techs, or areas where I am weak and depending on other people, and where I tend to panic because something is wrong and I don't personally know how to fix it. So I don't know, I feel like that's been a growth area for me. I think my partner, Brian, has been instrumental in helping me learn a lot about just being myself and accepting who I am and not being too worried about what other people think. I'm trying to think if there was an incident associated with that. Well, I don't know. Well, maybe I'll think of something as we do these other questions, and if so, I'll get back to it.
Okay. Thank you. Now that we've covered your high point, your low point, and a turning point, I'm going to ask you to concentrate on another event that stands out especially strongly in your story. This event should be a key event, a specific happening, or a critical incident, or any significant episode in your past set in a particular time and place. Could you please describe this critical or key event for me?
Well, I do want to mention that it was great when my book was published, and because it was the result of a lifelong ambition, and also in having to write it I learned a lot about who I was, what I believed in, what I thought was important to transmit to other people. I would lie awake at night thinking, let's see, in the chapter on being assertive, did I sufficiently explain that blah, blah, blah? And then I'd, write it down or wake up in the morning and I'd look at that chapter. When I go back over and read my book, it's a great resource for me. It was not a bestseller by any means. But when I'm writing my blog and I need to refer to something, I go to my book because, if it's on that topic, I go to my book because I've got a great index and footnotes, and I've explained things in a very clear and simple way that anybody could understand, which is my goal. And I'm really proud of it. And I guess, surprisingly, throughout much of my life, I haven't had a lot of self-confidence, but the process of writing the book helped me gain a lot in that area. That's really been important to me. I just know more about who I am and what I believe in.
Thanks for telling us about that.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back over your entire life, could you please identify and describe a scene or period in your life, including the present time, wherein you confronted a major health problem, challenge, or crisis? Please describe what the health problem is or was and how it developed. And if relevant, please discuss any experience you had with the healthcare system regarding this crisis or problem. In addition, could you please talk about how you coped with the problem and what impact this health crisis, problem, or challenge has had on you and your overall life story?
Well, this question makes me realize how lucky I am, because if I am not mistaken, I have not had any significant physical health problems. Throughout my life, I've sought out counseling and therapy for various issues, and I don't know if that's included in your question or if that's going to be something separate later on, but I guess I've had challenges coping with other people's health problems. I was very worried about my daughter. She had some health problems as a result of the labor and delivery. I'm hoping she's okay now. I think this is supposed to be about me, though, about my health problems. So, about 3 years ago, I had a couple of falls, and I think they were anomalies, but they did make me think. And I do have a few health problems. I have migraines. I started getting them at the age of 50, and then I have some, what the doctors call benign heart irregularities, but they're like nothing big. They're like mitral valve prolapse, which a lot of people have, and I have another thing too called a premature atrial contraction, where I have a little beat before the regular beat. I think that's what it is. But I don't, those are my major health problems. Oh, and my bones are a little bit thin, so I have to watch that. But anyway, about 3 years ago, I fainted in the bathroom in the middle of the night, fell on my head, woke up, and I was fine. I did have to go to the hospital at the urging of my daughter, who has so much common sense. I was going to think, oh my, I fell, but I'm fine, so I don't think I'll go. And she said, call your doctor and see what she recommends. So the doctor said, go to the hospital right now. So I had that fall, and then I love to walk, and I fell during a winter day that was very warm and sunny, but there were still patches of ice on the sidewalk. I fell, I fell so hard I couldn't get up for a minute, but I didn't break anything. And then I fell another time when I was walking. There was some sand from construction on the sidewalk. And I learned that I cannot multitask anymore. I have to just, if I'm going to walk, I just have to pay attention to where I'm going. I can't look around me. And I have to pick up my feet so I don't trip on those little ledges on the sidewalk. And and I fell once on a plane too, but my daughter says that doesn't count. So I've managed to pop up from these falls without any broken bones. And, my goal is to really arrange my life so that I don't fall. So I don't know. I just feel really, really lucky. My father said that he didn't start feeling old until he was 85. So I'm kind of hoping that, maybe I can. He lived till 91. So I don't know. I'm just lucky.
Thanks for telling us about that.
Mm-hmm.
Now I would like you to next describe a specific event or moment from your life in which you became aware of your ethnic and cultural background. Please provide as much detail as possible about this event. How has this event affected the way you think about your own cultural background or culture?
Well, the first thing I thought of when you asked the question was when I was in high school, a boy named John, his parents would not let him go out with me because I'm Jewish. And, but again, I've either ignored those prejudices or I haven't let them affect me. I'm trying to think. I think, could you read the question again? Let me see if I can make more sense of it.
Sure. Please describe a specific event or moment from your life in which you became aware of your ethnic and cultural background. Please provide as much detail as possible about this event. How has the event affected the way you think about your own cultural background or culture?
Well, in addition to what I said, I guess I have to say that when I hear about people who have had such tremendous struggles in their life, I like to read memoirs, and, these memoirs, people had crazy childhoods. I mean, they might have had a mother die when they were 3, which to me, that would be just such a tragedy, or their father was an alcoholic, or they lived in a dumpster, or whatever it was. I had this solid middle class upbringing that I took completely for granted, and I didn't realize how good I had it for a long time. I focused on the little annoying things about my parents, but of course I didn't have any perspective when I was younger, and the older I get, the more grateful I am that I had this solid middle class upbringing. My parents were not perfect, but they did love me, and they sent me to summer camp and gave me piano lessons, 2 of the most important things in life.
Thank you for telling us about that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, looking back over your life story, could you please identify the single person or group of people that had the greatest positive influence on your story? In other words, please identify the best character in your life story. Please describe this person, group, or organization and the way in which he, she, or they have had a positive impact on your story.
Well, there's so many people. I mean, there's my daughter. She's my favorite person, as I told her this morning. There is my summer camp. And I think that the group of counselors that I worked with at the community college was just such a great bunch of people. I just loved them. I still do, and I still get together with them on a fairly regular basis. I think that the reason my counseling supervisor had such a positive influence on me was that he was just one of the kindest people I've ever met. And I realized that to be a boss does not mean that you need to be like, if you'll pardon the expression, Donald Trump. You can be kind, you can be interested in the growth of the people who you work with. You can put them in a position so that their strengths are utilized. You can help them with their weaknesses rather than being judgmental about them. He just had a lot of positive qualities. I still really admire him. He's a very giving person who's always doing volunteer work. I think my 20-some years at the community college were just so helpful to me. I mean, they really... I looked forward to going to work every day, so that's a good thing.
Thank you. Now, looking back over your life story, could you please identify the single person or group of people that has had the greatest negative influence on your story? In other words, please identify the worst character in your life story. Please describe this person, group, or organization and the way in which he, she, or they have had a negative impact on your story.
Boy. Person, group, or organization. Well, going way back, my first camp, I had 2 camp experiences, and the first one was very negative because a friend, that was in air quotes, from school betrayed me, and I don't know, in the long run, was that good or bad? I learned to have a lot of empathy for other people, and compared to what other people experienced, that was such a minor thing, looking back on it. And more, having to learn. My divorce, while not the worst divorce in the world, got pretty messy. I had to learn to stand up for myself. I don't know, sometimes the person who is the worst person in your life can also be the best in some ways. My husband and I had a good relationship for many years, but then we didn't. And likewise, my current partner is a wonderful person, but he has at times had some problems with drinking. He is abstinent now. But again, that's been a growth experience for me because I go to Al-Anon, which is a great organization. And that's a story in itself. But anyway, so he is kind of saw the light after he had a fall. I think he realizes that he can't be an old person and drink. That's just not going to work out. Hopefully he realizes that. I don't know, because I can't control him. People who have been downright evil, I'm trying to think. I had a few boyfriends that I regret making the decision to go out with them. I'll have to think about that.
Okay, thank you. Now, in looking back over your love life, it may be possible to identify certain key moments that stand.
Here we go with the love life.
Certain key moments that stand out as turning points, episodes that marked an important change in you or your story. Could you please identify a particular episode in your love life that you now see as a turning point? If you cannot identify a turning point that stands out clearly, please describe some event in your love life wherein you went through an important change of some kind. The event you choose to describe may or may not involve your current romantic partner, if you have one. Again, for this event, please describe what happened, where and when, who was involved, and what you were thinking and feeling. Also, please say a word or two about what you think this event says about you as a person or about your love life.
Well, I'll start with the last first. Over the years, I've realized I'm a romantic. I always wanted to have this beautiful love, and that was, I don't know, maybe a soul-to-soul connection or something like that. I don't think I aspire to that exactly anymore, but it's just been hard to realize that my love life has been not so perfect, not always so great. I do enjoy my current relationship a lot, but, as I say, there have been these flaws that I've had to cope with. My partner is the kind of man who's quietly there for me. He's not very verbally expressive. I cherish the times that he has said something loving and sweet. Which, thank goodness, he occasionally does. And I have told him, I need more of that. And so, he has responded to that. But, so I don't have an ideal love relationship. That's been a little bit disappointing, but then again, I don't know if anybody really does. I have a great companion and someone who's on my side, and those are two really good things. So I guess the turning point was realizing that this is it. I'm going to go the distance with this person, I think. I'm not going to have that Prince Charming kind of love relationship. So, I don't know, I guess that's my turning point, that love is very important to me, and romantic love, I should say, because I have so many kinds of love in my life that I just feel like a whiner even complaining about this, but I'm not going to have the kind of romantic love that I envisioned for myself. But who knows, maybe I will. Maybe my relationship with my partner is constantly changing and evolving. Maybe it will evolve more in that direction. And I will say that I feel very happy, and I never would have imagined that at my age I have a passionate and interested sexual partner. So we're in our 70s, he's 78. So, you have that to look forward to. There you go.
Thanks for telling us about that. Okay, so your first interview with us was on February 17th, 2009.
Oh, okay. February 17th, 2009. Okay.
Yep, so about 8 years ago.
Right.
Looking back over the past 8 years since your first interview with us, what were your hopes, dreams, and goals during that time? And do you believe that you achieved them?
Okay, well, as I said, later in 2009, my book was published, so that happened. I didn't even know it was my goal to be a grandparent, but it's a really special experience. I didn't even remember what toddlers were like. I mean, when I was a mother, I was coping with my marriage, which wasn't so great, and having full-time work and being a full-time mother and being a grandparent. It's just thrilling to see little children and how they develop. I mean, they're very smart, even when they're not verbal. You can see them taking everything in. It's really interesting and exciting. And let's see, what else have I done since 2009? It's been a great 8 years, basically. My partner, since I broke the ice and mentioned that he has had drinking problems, this didn't occur till about 5 years ago. So that was sort of a low point. Suddenly, out of the blue, he started drinking every day. I always knew there was the potential there, and he had been in AA, but I had never experienced what it was like to have someone drinking, in his case, every weeknight. He did not drink on the weekends when we would spend time together, so that always kept me going and renewed our relationship and gave me hope that things would change. So, I can't imagine being a small child and coping with that. I just can't imagine. It must be so hard. But I learned, I was an adult and I had guidance. I coped with it and I think grew from the experience. And maybe that's the answer to what was the hardest thing. I don't know, I forget how you asked the question, but coping with that was really hard, not knowing what you were going to face when you got home. And probably that's not something most of the older people that you talk to are going to discuss with you. But I bet it's an issue for many because alcoholism is rampant in our society. I mean, I guess now the opiate crisis has kind of equaled or maybe even overtaken it, but among people of my generation, well, I don't know, I guess people are taking pills and things like that. But anyway, so now I've totally forgotten what I'm supposed to be talking about. What's the question?
Your goals over the past 8 years, and whether you think you've achieved them.
So the book, The Grandchild, having a better relationship with my partner despite our challenges. Writing. Now, I have lots of goals now about writing. I'd like to do a second book. I'd like to see if some of the books that I've written for my granddaughter are of publishable quality. Oh, this may be the next question. What are your goals in the future? But anyway, I have a lot of future goals. I'm going to go kind of scroll through the years, 2010, 2011, 2012. I'll just say those two things. There are three things, I guess I said. The book, grandchild, trying to understand myself as a romantic partner.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned this in your last response, but your life story includes key chapters and scenes from your past as well as you have described, and it also includes how you see or imagine your future. Mm-hmm. Can you please describe what you see to be the next chapter in your life?
Okay. Well, I really think I have 20 good years left. I may have more years than that, but especially having learned from my partner just the other day that my dad said this. He'd never shared this before. I guess we were talking about the eclipse, and he said, your dad told me that he didn't start feeling old till he was 85. And I said, you're kidding, when did he say this? And Brian said, in the year 2000. And I said, how do you remember that? And he said, because we were talking about how we never thought we'd get to see the millennium the millennium year approach, especially your dad didn't know whether he would get to see this day, and he started talking about when he started feeling old. And anyway, so I figure I've got 20 good years left, and I hope to do some more writing. Travel is important, especially because of my family in Oslo. But traveling is tiring. I'm getting more tired than I used to. So that's not necessarily one of my goals. But I certainly hope to definitely travel a lot during these first 3 to 5 critical years of my granddaughter's life, and try to give as much to her and my daughter and her husband, who's a great guy, as I can, because they are such good parents, they're so conscientious, and they're exhausted. I can see that they are. I mean, if you've ever watched people watching a toddler, it is very hard. And they have full-time jobs, and anyway, I want to help them out. So that's one of my goals, and I hope you asked about goals. I think I'm just going on and talking with what I want to talk about. So the writing, the helping raise my grandparent, and just relaxing. I love St. Louis. I grew up here, and one great thing about Brian and I is that we do things in the city. We go out, we explore different neighborhoods, and I love doing that. I hope to keep doing that, just having fun. And what was the question again?
Yeah, I think you told us a lot.
Did you ask about goals? I think that was what I answered.
Yeah, how you see your future.
Okay, that's how I see my future. 20 more really good years. And I have a 98-year-old aunt, and she is starting to decline, so my father's sister. So I don't know.
Okay. Lastly, I would like you to please provide us with a life theme. So looking back over your entire life story, with chapters and scenes, can you identify a central theme, message, or idea that runs throughout your life? And if so, can you please describe this theme?
Well, love and work, as Freud said. I mean, both of those have been really important to me. I don't know that I could pick one over another. But maybe it's just kind of persistence and learning from everything that happens. She persisted, as Hillary Clinton might say. That's a great question. That's a great question. And that... I don't know, I think if you love the things that you do and the people that you're with, you'll have more energy to the love for the people, and the love for your work can give you the energy to overcome some of the obstacles that you face. I feel a little bit hypocritical saying that because, as you now know, I haven't faced that many obstacles. many of my problems have been of my own making and in my own mind. But I guess that's what I would say.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
That's the end of the interview. We really appreciate you sharing your story with us. By sharing your story, you've helped future generations better understand what your life was like and how we can improve people's lives through future research. Now that we've finished this part of our interview, I can be more responsive again.
Okay.
And I'll also turn off this camera.
Okay.